Welcome to the Red Gauge Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Kyle. This is Josh. Today we're joined by Geno, the pirate of powerlifting, Biancheri. He's been an announcer with the USAPL since before it was the USAPL. He's been doing it for more than 25 years. So we're really excited to have him on because if you've ever seen a show where he was at, it's a great time, and we're really glad that you're here. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the time you guys are giving me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is kind of in the arc of the podcast right now. I feel like this is actually one of the first big snags. Some of the first people that we talked to, I was like, oh, I'm going to reach out to Geno. I'm going to get Geno on. And then all of a sudden, boom, we got it on there. So thank you very much for coming on.
I appreciate, Josh, I appreciate your tenacity. You did not. Josh sent me a message, said, I'm going to continue to badger you until you give me a yes or a no. And that's the way to be. That's the way to be in life, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Which is a hard. I'm not from the sales world, so that is a hard message for me to send. But one of the guys we had on earlier, Zach Bartell, that was one from his podcast, is in sales, you go until you get a hell yes or a hell no.
Yep.
Like the sale's not complete. So
yeah. So how did you get started in powerlifting?
God, I get asked that all the time. So I brought a couple of pictures that I've never shown anybody before, and I thought maybe I'd flip a few of them on the camera and people might get a kick out of them.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I started out in finance.
Right, you were saying that.
My undergraduate degree was in economics. My graduate degree was in finance. I got my master's in finance, specializing in portfolio theory and investment analysis. I became a Series 7 licensed stockbroker, and then I worked in finance in corporate America for several years, and sitting in a cubicle. I mean, it was a great job. I flew to various customers. I worked for Nabisco, the cookie cracker company, and we flew to various customers, Walmart and Target headquarters, and I would make presentations in the boardroom when I had short hair, no makeup, no jewelry, and a tie on. So people don't believe me when they go, "You made presentations in the boardroom in front of CEOs?" And I say, "Yes, believe it or not, I did do that."
I was a finance
tired
pro.
of the finance. Say that again.
I was in finance. I was in finance also before I started teaching. That was my previous career, was working in finance.
Were you really? Well, we both have similar backgrounds then, don't we?
We've just been derailed into the finance world.
No. We'll keep it on track.
I kind of got tired of that. And one day, I'm making this a long story. I hope we have time.
Yeah, we got all the time in the world.
Make it as long as you want.
One day, one of the guys from the sales department said to me, I want to bring a football player to one of my stores, ShopRite, a store here on the East Coast. He said, how many incremental cases of cookies do I have to sell in order to break even by inviting this guy in and paying him however many thousands of dollars he wanted for a 2-hour signing? So I had to do that financial analysis. And I did it. I gave it to him and he said, thanks. And, he went back to his customer and made sure he got that payback. And then he said, hey, you did the work for us. So you're welcome to come on down and see the signing if you want. So on a Saturday morning, I shot down to the ShopRite, and I honestly don't remember who it was. It was somebody from the Giants, the New York Giants. And the excitement and the energy was insane. I mean, it was when they had won the Super Bowl, and there was a ton of people in the parking lot of the building. It was noise, it was music. It was just, the excitement was just it was so much energy in the room. I said, wow, this is something that I got to get involved in instead of sitting in the cubicle doing the finance all day long. So I took a job in the advertising department, in the sales department, doing consumer promotions. Specifically what consumer promotions, where you looked on the back of the box and it would say, I'll just give you 2 quick examples of something I used to do. I ran a sweepstakes that enter for a chance to go to Las Vegas, meet Britney Spears backstage, and then go see her show out in Las Vegas. Another one was enter for a chance to go to the Super Bowl, but first you go to Napa Valley and you go on a winery tour with Joe Montana and then you go to the Super Bowl with him, because Joe lived
All right.
in Napa Valley at the time. So I always tried to do these events that anybody can buy 2 tickets online to go to the Super Bowl, or buy tickets to get front row seats to a Britney show, but you don't necessarily get to have dinner and go on a winery tour with Joe. That's something you
Right.
just can't buy. So they were pretty popular events, and I started running all those types of events where I worked mostly with sports and entertainment equities, and then there's some other movie and TV celebrities too, and that's how I first got my start on the microphone. I ran an event with Derek Jeter, and we had a charity softball game, and I was the guy on the microphone announcing that game on the microphone over the stadium, play by play. I was actually standing behind the pitcher's mound and announcing the whole event. That was actually kind of my first crack at the microphone. So I ran all these events, and one of my friends owns a bar on the Jersey Shore, and he said, "Can you bring one of those events to my bar, which is right on the beach? I want to generate some business." And I said, "No, do you have $400,000? Yeah, I'll get you Britney Spears. Do you have three-quarters
Right.
of $1 million? I'll get you. I get you a big name. The guy has a $42 budget." I said, "Who do you expect me to bring?" He said, "Well, he thought he was going to get me to do something because I had the contacts, but he obviously didn't have the money." So he said, "What can we do?" I said, "You're on the beach. How about a bikini contest?" And he said, "Great, you run it." So every weekend, while I was still working at Nabisco, on the weekends down at the Jersey Shore, I would run bikini contests, and I was the guy in the microphone running the contest. And can you see that?
Uh-huh.
If you can't, so what we could do there, Gino, is when we're done with this, take a picture of it and text it to me, and we'll get it up.
Yeah, we'll make it bigger in
We'll
the
get it
video.
bigger for everybody.
But
Yeah.
but you got the general
Yep.
idea, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Take a look at this one. Look at how young I am in that one.
I definitely would not have been like, oh, that's Gino the Pirate.
Yeah.
So I did kind of some of these events every weekend. I was doing them, and one day a guy, and we had like 700 people in the audience. One day a guy came up to me after the show and said, "Hey, I own a powerlifting gym, and this is in the late '90s in your town." He said, "Would you like to come and announce my powerlifting competition? I love what you do up here with the bikini girls." And I said, "No." And he said, "Why?" I said, "I don't even really know what powerlifting is." I said, "Did you see what I do? I do, this." He says, "Well, everybody loves you." I said, "They don't love me. I'm traipsing." And by the way, we were fair. We did Saturday we had females across the stage, and on Sunday we had men in little G-strings going across the stage. So it was the females on Saturday, the males on Sunday, and I would bring people up on stage as judges to judge who they voted for number one to win a couple of $100. I said, "This is what I do." I said, "They're the show. I'm just there reading their bios." And he said, you have to come. Anything is better than what I've got right now." He said, "It's so boring." He said, he said, "Look, you can come, you get a free membership, you work out with these power lifters, you learn the sport, and then you announce." And I said, "Okay." And I started working out in his gym with this little gym in Rockaway, New Jersey, which to this date has somewhere between 8 and 10 world champions that
Yeah.
at point in time worked out there. I mean, I could just rattle off all the names. I worked out every week with a guy named Ray Benamarito, who is to this day is the winningest national champion in USAPL. I think he's won 14 or 16 national championships. So I'm a horrible lifter. Okay, I freely admit that anytime anybody asks. I do not have the body frame. Powerlifting, the shorter and wider you are, I'm tall and skinny. So, they put up with me. I enjoyed the sport. I wasn't any good at it. And I announced my first competition in the gymnasium, a little local competition. And I had a different name then. My name, believe it or not, they called me Geno the Mouth. And
That's very, very Jersey.
it's another example of me
Oh yeah.
with Dave and Gene on the Mountain. Dave was the other guy that I announced with. We were co-announcers. That was back when I just had to sit on the table and
He looks 90s powerlifting right there, like
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
the
And
mustache just
we we
white
we
as hell.
we had to what we had to do was we had to run it by the cards. There were no computers. We were doing it by cards on the table. And
Hmm.
uh, I just want to hold up a few more. There's another one. And the fun
Oh,
part about
nice.
that was it was intimate, it was small, and I enjoyed doing it. But it was such a far cry from what I do now, So I started announcing at that local gym. I figured I was going to announce a couple of competitions and that would be it. But what happens? They said we're now running bench states. Oh no, we're running a state championship. Will you come and announce state championships at a hotel? I said sure. I announced that. Then a short while later, they said we're now running bench nationals at Newark Airport, because I'm from New Jersey, and I announced bench nationals at Newark Airport. Then they asked me to come to the Arnold's and announce at the Arnold's. I announced at the Arnold's, and then some guy from Sweden came up to me and said, I'm doing bench worlds. Would you like to come to Sweden and announce bench worlds? And I looked at him straight in the face and I said, don't you have anybody in your own country you want to do that? It's like, why's the guy going to fly me over from the U.S.? And he said, no, we want you. And once I announced that first bench worlds in Sundsvall, Sweden, about 10 or plus years ago, every country thereafter started to call or contact me and say they wanted me to do their country's nationals or their country's worlds when they were running it there. I didn't plan on this. I just fell into the thing. I announced that first contest that I announced in that little gym, Pro Fitness, in Rockaway, New Jersey. I announced it sort of like a bikini contest. Half the people thought I was insane, and the other half couldn't wait for me to come back. So, because I brought something that they didn't have, which was a little entertainment and some excitement. And so as I continued to do that, I had even when I got to Worlds with the IPF tended to be very sterile environment, similar to to some of the Olympic weightlifting events I've been to. We can get into that later.
Yeah.
And then when I came in and was doing that again, half the people loved me, and half the people said, what is this guy doing? Why does this guy that looks like a pirate? And by the way, I wasn't a pirate. I was in the music business. Okay, remember I told you that I worked with celebrities, and I did some of those things. I worked with sports celebrities. I worked with Diamond Dallas Page. I worked
Oh,
with I worked with the Undertaker. I worked with all kinds of celebrities. I worked with I worked with Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, if you remember who that is.
yeah.
Yeah.
I worked with Britney Spears. I worked with Ringo Starr. I actually got to sing on stage with Ringo Starr while he was on tour. He said, come and, I was doing my promotional stuff. He said, come on stage and sing backup. And I would sing backup for Ringo. I mean, how many people could say they sang backup live on stage with the Beatles singing Beatles songs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, uh,
Very, very few.
here's a picture of me and Ringo. Here's another picture of me and Ringo.
So
Yeah.
Uh,
are you saying that you just were really fashionable and
yes.
then you
So
went into
one time, this
powerlifting and they were like,
Right.
what the hell is
Thank
this
you for
pirate?
getting me back. Thank you for getting me back on point. I dressed like a rocker. Now, anybody that knows how a rocker dresses, especially somebody like a Keith Richards, um, they look like a pirate a little bit. Rockers and pirates aren't that far apart. I mean, all the Johnny Depp movies came out right around that time. And
Yeah.
by the way, Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones was in some of those pirate movies. Did you guys know that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Keith Richards was in there. So there's a lot of similarities between a rocker and a pirate. And when I came to my first one, I came wearing all my rocker clothes, and they all looked at me and said, "You look like a pirate." I said, "I'm not a pirate." I said, "I'm a rocker or a rocker wannabe," you know. And they said, "No." They said, "You're a pirate," because the Johnny Depp movies had just come out. It was all the rage. And then they said, "No, you're a pirate." And then the IPF did a centerfold spread on their magazine article on me, calling me the pirate of powerlifting. And after that article, it just stuck. And I was like, "Oh, name. You guys want me to be a pirate? I'll be a pirate." I bought some puffy shirts. I only took it so far. I wasn't going to have a parrot on my shoulder, or a peg leg or anything.
Peg leg.
So I just a little fluffy shirts and some bandanas that rock and rollers wear, like I'm wearing now. And the name just kind of stuck. So that's the transition from rocker to pirate, and the pirate name has just stuck. I can't get rid of that now. So uh, that's that's pretty much this. And then I started announcing. Once I announced that one in Sweden, um, I just over the years have been to almost every major country you can imagine. I mean, I spent 3 days in Mongolia in the Gobi Desert in one of those circular tents drinking yak milk. I did a powerlifting competition in Mongolia. You named, I've been to South Africa twice. I've done Belarus twice. I'm in no rush to go back to Belarus, I'll tell you that, given the political climate there now. But, Costa Rica, Brazil, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, you name it. I've been to the country, and I've announced. Uh, then that's when I worked for USAPL and for the IPF, the International Powerlifting Federation. And that's my long-winded story, is how I kind of just fell into this. I had no plans on this being my career. So all those years of finance, 4 years of undergrad and 2 years of graduate school in finance, kind of went out the window, because you really don't need that to shout and scream on the microphone like an idiot.
So how
Uh,
long into the announcing did you leave Nabisco? Because I would imagine it's a
uh,
little bit where you like still can't believe that they're calling you.
yeah, that's a good question. Shoot. I'm gonna say about um, maybe 10 years.
Okay.
About 10 years, maybe a little less, that I was still working at Nabisco because I needed a real job,
Right.
and I happen to be very thrifty with my income, and I invest a lot. So after about 10 years, I was able to kind of stop working at Nabisco and do this full time. And this job, by the way, I could make more money working at McDonald's. Uh, I don't. It's not a well-paying job. However, they cover my expenses, so I've pretty much been able to travel the world for free, which not a lot of people can say. Uh, so
Rarely do you get
this brought
yak
me
milk
to
through
places I
McDonald's.
probably, yeah, yeah, in the Gobi Desert, right? And so I mean, I was in Estonia, I was in Finland, I was in France. I've been to Austria. I'm going to Austria in a few months to announce their national championships. I'm going back there again. Just because I enjoy travel, I enjoy history, architecture, food, culture. I was just on vacation in Italy. I took my 92-year-old father and my sister, and we went to Italy, to Sicily, where our family is from. That's the first real vacation that I took in about 10 plus years, where it was just a vacation. It wasn't tied to a powerlifting competition, which is the fun part. If I go someplace fun, I'm going to spend a couple of extra days before or after and explore where I'm at. And that's the fun part of the job. So it's I now live very thrifty, and that enables me to do what I love without having a regular 9 to 5 job. Did I lose you?
Yeah. So, I gotta ask. We got a little lag right now. It says it's working through it, and so hopefully it's not a big deal. Maybe I'll just edit that out of the
Okay.
show. But what I gotta so I got a few questions about like locations. So first of all, what's the most beautiful place that you've been to present?
I'm glad you asked me what's the most beautiful place, because you got specific. People always ask me, what is your most favorite
Fully
place you
frozen.
went to? And I don't have a favorite place. I have multiple favorite places depending upon what you're looking for. The most beautiful place I went to was either the tropical forests of Costa Rica or the climbing of the volcanoes in New Zealand.
Did you get to do the Lord of the Rings trail when you were in New Zealand?
I did. It was fantastic to see that. They also had something there
Yeah.
called the glowworm cavern. When you went to a cavern and these worms were glowing like psychedelic lights. It was, and it's all natural. It's, you thought you were in a neon lit up cave, and it was all the lights coming out of the glowworms that New Zealand, I think that's on the North Island, is famous for. I did shoot up to the North Island and stay with one of the powerlifters and referees. The competition was in Christchurch in the South Island, but then we went up to the North Island and I spent some vacation time up there. It was fun. So to answer
Yeah.
your
That's
question, the
awesome.
most place was Costa Rica, tropical rainforest, or all the beauty that we saw out in New Zealand. The most fun place I went to was Hong Kong. Hong Kong had some restaurant and
Yeah.
nightlife. I'll tell. I really enjoyed that. And then of course I said the architecture and meat and food. It was Italy and France, and the wine in France, and the architecture in Vienna, Austria. I got to visit Arnold Schwarzenegger's museum when I went to Vienna. He lived where he grew up. They turned
Oh, that's awesome.
his house into a museum. That was kind of cool to see that. So those are
Yeah, I'm like
some of.
I have a lifetime goal of catching him on bench press and deadlift, and I'm not that far away, so I'm really trying to pass him.
Wow, good for you, man. Wow. I did forget to
I
tell
I
you.
do not have same goal.
You don't have what? Signal?
Oh, you're
Can
kind of cutting out again. What were you saying?
I said I did forget to tell you one part of my trek to the powerlifting. When I went to college, I started out. A lot of people don't know this. I started out as an art major, not a finance major. I wanted to become an artist, and I had. Um, I realized here's a couple of things that I did. Maybe this one was a telltale of what would happen in the future. That's a picture of a purple devil that I drew. Uh, I did that when I was in high school, uh, and then
is
I
that
did
you
a lot
next
of.
to it?
Say again.
Is that you
Say
next to
again.
it?
Yeah, that was me next to it.
Oh,
Yeah,
damn.
about 14.
Yeah.
And then when I was in college, I painted a mural of a Who album called The Who by Numbers. That's the rock group The Who. I painted that mural on my
Yeah.
wall in my college dorm. Uh, I used to go out with face paint, dressed like David Bowie, Aladdin Sane, Ziggy Stardust, and I realized I majored halfway through college. I realized when I got halfway through that I wasn't really good enough. I was decent locally, but to be good enough to get a gallery to show you stuff, you had to be about 10 times better than what I was. So I said I better minor in art and major in business. I did enjoy all those years that I was working with the celebrities. There was a big change in the travel. I want to show you a few more pictures. Um, I worked with that's Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian, the swimmer.
No,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
suit and
Now this one,
tie.
well, yeah. Now most people aren't going to know this one, but I'm going to throw it out anyway because he's such a big name for the older generation. That's me with the suit and tie and the short hair, and that's Paul Newman, the actor. Do you know the name Paul Newman?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And then I worked with one of the ladies from Charlie's Angels. I forget Jacqueline Smith. And then I worked with that's Martha Stewart. I don't know if you can see Martha Stewart. And then The lady in the middle was Jill Ireland, Kathy Ireland, and I told you, Derek Jeter. One of the craziest signings I ever did was when you would think that if I brought Derek Jeter or Dan Marino to a signing that it would get a good turnout. We would get like 300-400 people. I brought Bill Goldberg. Are you guys old enough to
Oh
remember
yeah,
Yeah.
Bill?
yeah. A bunch of you probably some crazy fans there.
Yeah, I brought Goldberg, and it wasn't 300 or 400. It was 3,000 or 4,000 people showed up. And they basically trashed the store. The line went out into the parking lot, down to Main Street on the highway, took a turn, and it went a quarter of a mile down the highway, people standing on line. And the cop comes in and he goes, "Who's running this event?" And I was like, and he said, "You need to shut this down now." He said, "I've got every cop on duty here in this parking lot. We can't have this." I said, "Dude, I am not shutting anything down with these nuts out here." I said, "People are gonna tear the building apart if they don't get to meet him." I said, "If you want to shut it down, you come with me with your gun out in the parking lot and you tell them it's shut, because I ain't doing it." And so with a little quick thinking, I told the audience, I said, on the line outside, I said, "You got two options." I said, "Either the next 100 people could come into the building and get a signature from Bill Goldberg," I said, "or he will come and walk down the line and high five everybody, and you can take pictures as he walks by." And sure enough, the first 100 people said, "Oh yeah, we want that option."
Yeah, yeah.
And the 3,000 people said, "No chance. We want him out here." So I brought him out, and he just kind of ran down the gauntlet and just high fived, and everybody clicked their. They like touching, It's very there's something about being able to touch the celebrity. It's that tactile, whatever it is. But just to be able to touch him and shake and just slap him on the back. They all wanted a piece of Goldberg. So,
Yeah,
so
it
and
makes
when
them
I was doing
real.
those events. Yeah, it makes it. You're exactly right. It makes it real. And then I did like who was the best quarterback of the century. I'd be out to dinner in Chicago at a steakhouse with Joe at the same time with Joe Montana, John Elway, Dan Marino, and what's his name, Johnny Unitas. You know, and I would invite people, and they'd be sitting there, and they'd come up to me and they'd go, "This is so surreal. I can't believe I'm standing here talking to these four quarterbacks." So that you stayed at the best hotels, you stayed at the best restaurants. Then I went to powerlifting, and I'm staying at the Best Western and having some
The
classic
best
meals,
yurt
right?
in Mongolia.
Yeah, yes, it is in a yurt in Mongolia with an outdoor porta potty in the middle of the night that I have to go out to take a piss in, and it's freezing cold in the desert at night, and it's like 104 during the day. So yeah, it wasn't the same. But you know what? I wouldn't I wouldn't change anything. Yeah, working with the celebrities was great, but the camaraderie that everybody has, the way they support each other. I think I told you, Josh, I said a guy will come up and he'll squat 501 pounds, and that'll put him in first place. And then the guy after him is going to put on 230 kilos, take it up 2.5 kilos to 507. And who's the first guy cheering him on? The guy that just lifted. They cheer each other on, they cheer for each other, they all have personal goals. The camaraderie between them is they eat, live, and breathe powerlifting. And the look on their faces when I hold their arm up after they've hit a state record, a national record, a world record, it makes my day. To me, that there's more satisfaction out of what I get out of doing that than traipsing Goldberg around for some autographs, and I can sincerely say that.
Yeah, I tell kids all the time that powerlifting is the best sport to compete in because you just hang out with your friends and eat snacks all day. Like you can't beat it. It doesn't get any better. And to throw it back just a little bit, now that we're getting into the weird parallels of life, I was an art major. I went
Oh
originally.
my God, wait a minute, wait a minute. One of you was finance and the
Nope,
other one
it's
was
the
art
same
major.
one.
Same one, finance and art.
I feel like
Oh
you're
my God,
showing the
you're
bean.
not.
Yeah, yeah. So I went to school. I was gonna study math, and I took an art class because I had to fill out my schedule, and I fell in love with it. Like it was the one of the best classes I ever had in my entire life, and I just never looked back. I just went full art after that. I abandoned math, and and then still ended up doing finance and teaching math. I'm a math teacher now. And so it's just funny though that you were a finance guy and an art guy.
So you're saying you're pretty close to being a rock star.
Yeah, I'm pretty close to being a rock star.
That
Yeah.
was not a pirate.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So you teach math now?
Yeah. Calculus. I do some classes for the university and stuff, and then regular high school math classes, and
So
yeah,
you did come full circle in a way.
yep.
Classic art major stuff.
Classic art major stuff.
Calculus.
I guess we're there's plenty of people that took art and thought that we had visions of grandeur, and it wound up going nowhere. But
Yeah, for
there's not a
me,
lot of.
it
And
was. I spent a little time interviewing some professional artists, and I had some placements. Like I had an opportunity to go to Rome, and I had an opportunity to go to Kyoto, and I had an opportunity to go to New York. And so, like, I had placements after I got done, but I really just wanted to, marry my wife and have babies, and I didn't really want to. It's weird to say that I didn't want to go to Rome or Kyoto or New York or whatever, but I was very happy with just spending time with her. That was the most important thing to me. So things change,
But all I can say to that is you got your priorities straight.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't regret it at all. I'm very, very happy with the choices I made. It turned out really good for me, so I'm not complaining even a little bit.
I mean, when I was in a cubicle doing finance, do you think I thought I'd be traveling the world announcing powerlifting?
Yeah.
That was farthest thing from my mind,
Yeah.
So you've been doing it for so long now. Do you have anybody, either A, that maybe you announced them when they were younger and now their child is lifting, or someone that you did like at the teen level that you remember that now is like masters? Like, do you have that lifestyle or life?
I do have lifters that I was announcing when they were teenagers, and they are now Masters 2 lifters. So that's 30 years, or almost 30 years. Yeah, they were a teenager, and I've now announced them as Masters 2 lifters. I don't think yes, I have. I have announced the children of guys that I originally started when they were junior lifters. I have had a couple, multiple, as a matter of fact. Their kids come up and say, "This is going to be the first time you're announcing my son," and he's he's following in my footsteps. And I've announced on the same platform at the same time a lot of mother-daughter duos.
Okay.
So the mom's out there lifting, and then the daughter comes out and lifts. So my friend Elizabeth Richardson, she's a mom that lifts and referees. She's out of El Paso, Texas, and her daughter Natalie Richardson, who is I believe a world record holder in the bench. I forget her numbers. I know she's a national record holder, but yeah, I've done a couple of mother daughter and father son combinations, and it's always kind of cool when they're both at the same competition competing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Have you gotten to, so I guess it's some crazy stories maybe? Have you gotten to see things in your time that really blew your mind? Like, I mean, you've been around long enough to have seen like John Hack and Jen Thompson and Ed Cohen and all those guys. So like, are there any lifts that stand out in your mind where you were like, I did not think that was either humanly possible or that they were going to get it, or, that were like just really great moments in the sport for you?
I got a few that I consider my just fond memories and kind of peaking milestones that people hit, and in no particular order. At our nationals, Raw Nationals in Atlanta, I believe I got to announce. I know I got to announce Ray Williams for the first time when he squatted over 1,000 pounds raw.
Yeah.
That the people were hanging from the rafters. I thought the building was going to. There was so much energy, and that was a memorable for me. To get the crowd riled up for him when he came out. It was insane. It was like a Beatles concert. You couldn't hear yourself. And he came out and made that lift. Now, what's interesting, what a lot of people don't know is that was a national meet. So yes, Ray was the first guy to squat over 1,000 pounds raw, but he was not the first guy to get the world record. The world record, I announced, his name is Jeza Uepa,
Uh-huh.
the island. Do you know that name or no?
Yeah. Isn't he from is it Nauru or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
God, you just scored 10 points for that one, pal.
That's why he's the calculus teacher right there.
He's from the island of Nauru, which is a little island off the coast of Australia. And I announced him in New Zealand at a world level competition where he squatted 1,000, so he over 1,000. So he was technically the first guy to get the first world record of squatting over 1,000. So that was a big deal there. The Ray was a big deal. Couple of my other favorites was announcing Blaine Sumner at the Arnold Sports Festival,
Oh
where
yeah, when he was doing single ply?
when he was doing single ply, and I believe he squatted. I believe he squatted 515.
Yeah, it was
Uh,
something insane.
I think it was 515 kilos. But then the year before that, though, was what really impressed me. And you being a math guy are going to know, statistically speaking, what I'm talking about here. I got to announce him on the main stage. I believe it was the Rogue stage at the Arnold's when he benched 1,004
Hmm.
pounds. Now that number, I mean, I just watched Bench Worlds just took place this past week. I don't know if you know that
Yeah.
in in Norway, and I watched some of it. The super heavyweights, I think, benched. I think that the low eights or seven. I think the winner benched 799 pounds.
Hmm.
Okay, and in previous competitions in Sunval, I know they benched in the middle eights, 860 maybe 870. Um, when people break world records, they break it by a chip. They break it by a
Yeah.
half a kilo or a kilo, and I have never seen anybody break it by the percentage in which he did. I mean, how can Blaine go from the best being 860 to 1,004? Second place, 1,004 is the world record, and the next best lift is 872 pounds. It,
That is
it's just
crazy.
it's statistically speaking, it's a huge. It's like a high teens to 20% jump over what the next best lifter is doing. To me, that was one of the greatest accomplishments in anybody's powerlifting career. To
Yeah.
watch him and got to announce him to do that. But my all-time favorite was at IPF Worlds. I don't remember the year, 2013 maybe, in Orlando, Florida, when the young girl by the name of Weilin Chen, uh, who weighed, uh, I guess she weighed 100 and change,
Hmm.
and she squatted 4.5 times her body weight,
Yeah.
and it was equipped. And I'm announcing it, she racked and unracked 3 times because the bar was shaking so much on her back. She didn't have, it just, she couldn't get stable. But being able in that 60 seconds to come out with the final time when she unracked it the third time and get 3 lights or white lights for 4.5 times her body weight. Uh, I haven't seen anybody else do 4.5 times their body weight in the squat. I've seen four, but I haven't seen 4.5. And for that tiny little girl to do that was just, to me, was one of the biggest accomplishments in powerlifting history, along with some of the other ones that I told you about. But she was quite a spectacular lifter.
Yeah, that's so impressive because anybody who's ever done anything really hard, like if you've ever done anything really hard, you know how much or how difficult it is to get over a false start. right? Like having to get that weight over and over and over again and stay in it
Sure.
mentally is like that might be as big of an achievement as the squat itself, you know?
Right. And I think that's why it's number one on my list, because she was able to overcome that. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wish I
Yeah.
knew the exact numbers. But I do know that it was over 4.5 times her body weight, or right around there. So,
Okay, so we already got
oh,
the your oh go ahead.
go ahead.
I was
No,
gonna say
that's just gonna say those were some of my big ones. Go ahead. What
yeah.
else?
I was just gonna say we already got the yurt and the yak's milk. Have you had any other really bizarre accommodations in your trips?
Well, that's a tough question.
Don't want to put anybody on blast. Like this guy let me sleep on his couch, but it wasn't really a couch. It was just like straw mat on
Yeah,
the floor.
yeah, no, could be number. You know what I find interesting? I mean, it's not that bizarre, but I find interesting in Europe. It doesn't matter which country you're in. It is standard to have a couch in the living room. Every country that I've been, including my vacation I just took in Italy, but I remember I was in the Netherlands. Okay, every kitchen has a couch in it. And I think that they over there they feel that the kitchen is the main room where families and people gather together and they cook and talk and drink and sit. So they have a couch in addition to the kitchen table with the chairs. Every country, and yeah, and I do remember in the Netherlands when I was announcing, and I they put me on a pull-out couch in the kitchen, and there I am sleeping, and I wake up in the morning to people making eggs and bacon right next to me in the kitchen. That was kind of strange.
Getting
And,
woken up by bacon grease is not
yeah,
exactly how you want to do it.
it was
Sounds
a
like
little.
my dream. I would be so excited if somebody woke me up with bacon
Maybe
grease.
the smell of it, not it popping on you.
I'll take what I can get.
I've, I've, I've and some of the funny things when people would recognize me, I always thought was kind of humorous because it was so scary at first. I was in Hong Kong going home, and I just went through security, and a guy with a suit and tie on, not TSA, okay, a guy with a suit and tie on that TSA reports to him. He grabs me by the arm. He says, "Excuse me, I just went through security." I'm like, "Oh my God, what did I do wrong? Is there a gun in my luggage?" And he grabs me and he spins me around. He goes, "Are you Geno Powerlifting?" And I went, "Oh my God, yes." He said, "Oh, I just want to get a photo with you." And when I was in Netherlands, I had to walk to my hotel from the train station, and I'm walking to my hotel, and there's a guy sitting along the railing there, across the parking lot, and the guy's beelining for me. He's coming straight for me, and I start walking faster to get to the. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I start walking faster to get to the entrance of the hotel. He starts walking faster. Pretty soon, we both meet up. He's 6'10", right? And guy grabs me by the arm and he says, "Are you Geno Powerlifting?" I said, "Oh my God, you scared the crap out of me." I said, "Yes." I want some picture at 1 o'clock in the morning. I've run into people in the strangest places where they know me, and then in the strangest places where they don't know me, but they think they know me. If I had a nickel every time somebody thought I was the Undertaker at the airport, I could retire. I said, "No, I'm not the Undertaker." And this guy followed me to my gate and he said, "I know you just said that because you don't want to be bothered, but now that you're sitting at the gate, will you sign this for me, Undertaker?" And I said, "What am I going to do if this guy is that convinced I'm the Undertaker?" So I just signed some little scrap of paper he had as the Undertaker, and off he was. He was happy. But I
That's
get that
awesome.
a lot. I get that a lot. "Hey, are you the Undertaker?" I'm like, "No, I don't think I look anything like the guy, but evidently other people do." So there you go.
It's the, you're tall and you got the swagger, so
Yeah. And I used to wear a lot of black back then. I used to have just one outfit then. I had the black leather pants and the black jacket and the black vest with the gold stars and the black hat. And he wore a lot of black, so I can see why. And I was tall like him, yeah. Um, but now I'm kind of more into the color thing, as you can tell.
yeah.
So I do have a question. So obviously we have you on our podcast, so we obviously like you, and I know a lot of people that like you. But do you run into? I mean, it's the world. So do you run into any like detractors, or do you ever have any lifters that aren't into it? It can't be everybody's jam.
Great question. Great question. And all I can say is in this world, everybody has detractors, no matter where they're at or what they're doing. It's human nature. I've come to realize, and I always wanted everybody to like me. And after a few years of realizing I was never going to make that happen, I gave up, and I realized detractors are always going to be there, and you're going to have to deal with it. I always go back to statistics again, Kurt. Um, if there's 1,000 lifters and 90% of them like me and 10% don't, that's a pretty good ratio. Okay.
Absolutely.
But then I think about it and I say, well, 10% doesn't, 1,000 lifters, that's 100 people. And there's about 100 people in this room right now. And I'm looking at how big 100 bodies are in a room. And I'm saying, shit, that's a lot of people that don't like me. But but statistically speaking, that's not really the case. So I used to try, now I just give up. There's a lot of people think I'm ruining the sanctity of the sport, and I'm kind of, I've been called a clown by guys in Norway, by mostly by the older generation power lifters, that grew up with a very sterile environment. So they say, "Oh, you're acting like a clown. You're jumping on chairs. You're jumping all over the place." And other people said, "You're just a silly pirate." So yeah, and you guys know that those people are usually the loudest. They're the
Yeah.
ones that are posting most and so and it used to hurt me, and then I said, I don't care. So now they can say whatever they want. I know it's a small percentage. Everything I do is try to make people happy. I get people that don't like me when I do the 666 thing, and they tell me that it's disgraceful. And I had one guy at nationals. He was on deck. He was either on deck or in the hole, and he says, "Can I talk to you for a second?" And I said, "Yeah." And he pulled me out into the hallway, out in the cement hallway in the background, where the kitchen dishes were, and he says, "It's all about Jesus." And I said, "Yeah, I know that." I said, "When I do this thing," I said, "they're plastic horns that light up." I said, "Just light humor." I said, "I'm not, some sadistic Satanist that's laying on the floor in a pentagram doing all kinds of chants. I don't know what you want me to say. They're plastic horns. It's just a joke. It's just for fun. And if you knew the Bible, you'd know the reference in the Bible, in the book of Revelations. They're basically saying, beware of the devil. So when I say, beware of he who hath understanding, beware of the number, they're saying, beware of the devil. Don't be fooled or be brought in by the devil. But and a lot of the people that give me that I don't even think they understand the passage from the Bible. What I think when I did my competition in New Zealand, when Ed Jezza squatted over 1,000, the guy said to me, he said, "Well, this place is normally a church during when there's no powerlifting going on. I'm the owner of this building, and you can't do that 666 in the building anymore." I said, "Okay." And the next lifter came up. The next time a lifter came up with that number, I said, "Here comes so and so, and he's got 666." I said, I go, wait, and I go, "It's just a number." That's
With
back in the
no
room. He's in the back room. He gives me the thumbs and gives me the thumbs up. Um, you know, I, and I also, when I was there, my first day I had a suit and tie on. I don't know why I brought a suit and tie there. I don't remember why. All I know is I came on stage with a suit and tie, and the people that were running the meet said, "We did not bring you all the way halfway across the world for you to wear a suit and tie." They said, "That's like inviting Santa Claus, and he doesn't come in the red jumpsuit. He comes in a suit and tie." They they made me go back to the hotel and change into the pirate outfit. I
That
went
is
back to
awesome.
the hotel, changed into the pirate outfit, and when I walked on stage, I got a standing ovation. So there are certain expectations that people have. There are always detractors. I've been doing this too long now, where I just ignore them and I ignore the stuff online, and try to do what's best for the lifters. I'm always about the. Everybody thinks because I wear these flashy outfits and jump all over the stage, it's all about me. No, I make it all about the lifters, and anybody that knows me knows that's exactly what I do.
Yeah.
And if anybody else thinks otherwise, then that's their issue.
It's just interesting because a lot of the times when I do hear somebody bitching, it's a fan because they obviously see you through the whole meet. But when you're on the backside of that curtain, like the last thing as a coach or a lifter, like you're not thinking about anything else that's going on, right? Like you
Right,
get there and you do the lift and you come back and you're ready for the next lift. So
right,
I don't see how it takes away from any of the lifters
No.
at all. And like I like every time I've ever been to, you're not slapping a lifter as they're coming up. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing like the fat head or whatever, it's like behind. Like I don't even in the meets that I've coached with you announcing, I don't ever remember you even being there until the meet was over. But
right.
in the meets that I've watched, it's like, oh God, he must have been all over the place. Like, but
Sure.
you probably shouldn't be paying. If you're a lifter and you're paying attention to the announcer, you might want to work on the focus a little bit
Yeah, yeah.
before going in there.
You
But
get just
if you,
going and realize what's important. I recently had a referee, very recently, had a referee say to me that when I hold the fat head behind someone, and I want to that is distracting to the lifter, and if they miss the lift because of that fat head, that picture, whatever it is, that they can go to the jury table and get a relift. And I said, let me tell you how I do it. I said, I'm only holding a sign up when either a family or a fellow lifter wants me to hold it up. They made the sign and they tell me, they wave me over. Can you please hold this sign up? So what I do is I have the sign behind my back and I'm standing in the back of the platform. When the lifter comes out, they don't see the sign because it's behind my back.
right,
I wait till they hit the bar, okay? And when they unrack, okay, I hold it up behind their back. And the cameras go crazy and the people are cheering because they think it's cute and funny and I hold it. And if the person misses the lift, I immediately pull the sign down behind my back so if they're walking off, they don't even see it.
yeah,
Don't even know what happened. But if they make the lift, man, oh man, I hold it right in their face, and they're just unbelievable, just exuberant. They're just unbelievably happy. So, for this individual to say that it distracts the lifter, it can't distract them because they never see it when they're coming out. And I am only doing it when it's a good lift, showing it to them. And in 25 years of doing it, I never had anybody say to me, any coach go to a jury table and say, I want to relive. Geno held up a sign. It's ludicrous.
yeah.
So, you know, there's always detractors out there, but again, it's the 90-10. It's usually an 80-20 rule, right, Kyle?
Yep.
But I call it the 90-10 rule. Okay, 90% of the people like it, 10% don't, and there's nothing I can do about that.
Well,
But
if
I'm
you've ever been to a powerlifting meet that doesn't have somebody like
Announcing.
it can
It's
be
blah.
dull. I love powerlifting, and a powerlifting meet can be dull.
Mhm.
And then if the crowd is down, then all of a sudden the lift, like I try to teach, like you don't understand, especially on the deadlift, how much that energy, like you're giving those lifters energy, like get them
Mhm.
hyped up. No one wants to
but
walk into a damn library and do deadlift. Like,
if I could tell you how many people said to me, I don't think I would have gotten that last deadlift if it wasn't for you hyping me in the crowd up. If I had a nickel for every time, I'm telling you, I'd be rich. And that means the world to me. To hear them say that means the world. That to me is the ultimate goal that I have. If I can excite the crowd and I can get the lifter so riled up that he's hit a new PR that he or she can genuinely say, I don't think I would have gotten unless you had that energy going. I love that. And it does happen more often than not.
Yeah, I think I think that one of the things that powerlifting and weightlifting miss out on is celebrating the personalities of the lifters and stuff who are there. Like, we talked about Blaine Sumner. He used to put chalk on his face because it was like his own little boycott of the like uniform restrictions and stuff, and having to just go up there and do your lift and not be able to be yourself. And I think that powerlifting and weightlifting would both grow as sports if they, let the athletes be themselves a little more. Wear
I,
some funny
I
singlets, wear
mean,
some
I
funny
mean,
shoes.
obvious. Yeah, obviously, I'm going to be in total agreement with what you said. I mean, if you want the sport to grow, I mean, look at what sport, in my opinion, has grown to non-strongmen is all the strongman competitions. They all have personalities. They're on TV, be it cable TV, TBS, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
They're on TV. They have a big following, and there's a big following there of people who have nothing to do with lifting or strongman. They love the
Mm-hmm.
excitement on TV. And if we could have everybody that had a personality and wore the crazy outfits, and the people here, if I told you how many parents come up to me after every competition and say, this sport stinks and you made this so much fun. They're usually reading a book or doing a crossword puzzle. They're there for 6 hours and they get to see their lifter for 9 minutes.
Yeah.
That's it, 9 minutes, 9 lifts. And they said you just made it interesting. I love to explain to the audience what the guy sees. If somebody has some up and down on the bar, it's a quarter of an inch up and down on the bar as he's benching. Nobody sees that from the audience or knows what that's for. And they see the guy make the lift, and then they get 3 red lights, and they don't understand why. So I explained to them. They got a blue, was up and down on the bar. It was very slight. You couldn't see it. And then all of a sudden they can engage because they understand. They know what they're looking for then. And if they understand the rules, they can engage, and it makes it more entertaining. And I try to throw a little comic relief in there too. I remember once I was announcing 5 simultaneous platforms at Raw Nationals one year, and this old grandmother came up to me and to this rope stanch, and she says, "Come here." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Do you know when this is going to end? I have dinner reservations." And I said, "Well, I'm not really sure." I said, "But it's going to end around 8:30." I said, "If you'd like, you give me the name of the hotel. I'm not busy right now. I'll be more than happy to call the restaurant and change your reservations." She said, "Would you really?" And I said, "No." And I walked away from her. So, you know, and the rest of the crowd found that entertaining.
Yeah.
But I just and my my favorite competitions, other than the Arnold's, there's so much energy in the air at the Arnold's. I love that. My favorite competitions are always when collegiates happens, because the whole team, that 20 kids, when their lifter is coming up, they all stand on the rope and the stanchions and they all scream and yell. It's so noisy. There's so much energy. I'll jump over the stanchion and jump into the crowd with them and cheer with them as they're cheering their lifter on. And they got the noise and the horns and the whistles it's just there's so much energy and excitement at collegiate nationals every year. It's one of my favorite weeks, and it just happened about a month ago, so it was a lot of fun.
So now you'll be DTs for 11 months while you wait for it to come back around again.
Good point.
Well, that's the big thing. So we talked about this as well when we are on our phone call, but I've now done 2. I had been coaching, and I got out of the coaching, at least at the high school level, and my buddy just asked me to come do his event. But it was exhausting. There was state was 6 racks, but not announcing at the same rate. I was really only announcing state records, and this is a what would you call that? It's a federation that's not tied to anybody else.
Yeah.
It's just Washington State High School Powerlifting.
Did you say simultaneous racks?
Yeah.
6, but not announcing. I wasn't necessarily like announcing every weight. I was only doing the state records. Or if like one boy went up and he was attempting 695 on the deadlift that's huge. So, announcing these things, I don't think it was, or it might actually have been for the state record, but, and then maybe 1 week ago, I did 2 racks, but it was a USAPL meet, and it was for the Ladies of Iron, the United Ladies of Iron.
I just announced that. Yeah. a week or two ago in Connecticut.
Yep.
Which state? Washington. You did it. Dana
Yeah.
Snow's meet.
Yes. So, which Dana I've known for quite some time, and there's just something, I don't know if anybody knows Dana, but she's all of 5 foot tall, little
Right.
dark haired, and she's terrifying. She absolutely terrifies me. Like, she's every time I've talked to her, she's been absolutely sweet, but I know behind she's just like ready to pounce there. She's
I'm not going to get into this online. I want you to ask her next time you see her. You know, she was formerly a cop. Did you know that?
I don't, but now I'm realize why I'm getting the vibes.
I want you to add, because I don't feel it's right for me to say this online, but I want you to personally ask her why she quit being a cop.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
There's
All
a
right. Yeah.
My
right
brain.
there, and you when you see the answer, you say, I can see that. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's move on.
But yeah, so I was legitimately like thrashed. One meet, not even like it wasn't even like a morning session and an evening session. It was just I guess it was an afternoon session, 2 racks. And I was like, I do not know how. Like, let's say we're doing nationals. That's like 2 to 3 times a day, multiple racks. And I was just like, oh my God, Geno's a goddamn Iron Man. Like, it was crazy.
I have to learn to, there's a few tricks how to keep the voice without the voice falling apart. I always tell people you have to you get as much sleep as you can. You don't drink alcohol after the competition is over. That's another thing that I've always had to deal with at Worlds. All the juniors lifted, right? And they're done, and they're all drinking in the lobby of the hotel. And or all the masters lifters, whatever. And I'd come in and they'd see me. I used to try to sneak into the hotel, and they'd see me and wave me over. Now, if I just blow them off and wave them over, I'm the obnoxious one. You know what I mean? I'm the bad guy. So I can't not come over, and be rude if they've waved me over. Then it's, oh, you think you're too good to come over and drink with us? So I got to come over, and I have, it's called the Irish goodbye. I would come, they would give me the shot. They were all doing shots. I would do the one shot, and as soon as I did the shot with them, they would scream and yell, and then everybody would go back to their talking, and I would literally walk backwards until I hit the hallway and turn and get to the elevator. And you know what? They have no idea that I was only there for 4 minutes. They think I was drinking with them the whole night because they remember me first coming over and doing the shot. But I can't drink every night of a 10-day competition and function the next day. It's impossible. No, you drink a little. I drink hot water with honey, and it coats the throat. That works. And a lot of times, I will turn the speaker, the mixer. I will turn the volume up louder, and then I hold the microphone away from my face, okay? So that it's just normal because it's been turned up loud. And if I need to scream for a national record, when I hold it to my face, it's already loud and it comes in louder because I'm modulating and I'm working with the volume that's already been turned up, so I don't have to put that stress on my throat.
Right.
Also, yeah, you also have to learn to when you scream, you don't scream from the back. If you scream from the back of the throat, your voice will be hoarse within 4 hours. You have to scream from the diaphragm and let it come out from the diaphragm, and you're giving the throat a break so that you don't have that raspy voice after the end of 2 or 4 days with 3 sessions and 1,000 lifters at a competition. So there's a few tricks to the trade that you learn over time.
Gonna have to come out and job shadow.
Yeah. Job shadow.
Do a job shadow session.
So I like that we got to some advice because we always try to get advice for people. So that's advice for new MCs. Are there any like mistakes that you've made along the way in your MC career that you wish that you could do over, or you can put a word to the wise for people who are new in the game that like, hey, this is something you should probably avoid besides the voice control and not drinking the night of the show.
Yeah, one would be just don't scream from the back of the throat or you're sunk. Two would be certain people, not everyone. It's the 80-20 rule again. Certain people, if you don't pronounce their name correctly, take that very personally.
Mm.
I never understood why I'm at a world competition. I'm trying to announce names from every country in the world. And, I may screw a couple of them up, and some of them don't care. And I'll go up and I'll ask them later, and they say, "Oh yeah, that's fine. You were close enough." And some of them are highly insulted that I didn't get their name right, and many of them will send their family member over to me and say, "You announced his name wrong the first time it came out. It said so and so." And most people are polite, but some people cop a real attitude. Like, how could you screw that up? You're getting his name wrong. Like, I'm sorry, I'm doing my best. It used to be when I would go to World, I would walk around the lobby the night or two before the competition, and I would look for the country. They wear jackets with their country name on it, and I'd look for who the coach was, because the coach usually spoke English. And I would say, "Can you please tell me how to say these four Polish names?" And then he would tell me, and I would write it down phonetically next to their name. Well, after doing that for many, many years, I learned how to say a lot of the names, and some of them I was just winging.
Yeah.
And if they came over and corrected me, fine, I took it. But so try to get their names right. Another thing I would say, I don't mean this from a negative standpoint, but from a positive standpoint, try I've spoken about this. Engage the audience. If you want to be successful, engage the audience. I don't care if you're engaging them with light humor, or you're engaging them by telling them what was wrong with the list and what the cards mean and what the rules are, and go on and on and on. That's a big help, rather than just standing up there and saying, "Lift is good." I mean, that's why the guy asked me to come into that little gym in Rockaway. He said the guy was up there and he'd say, 400 pounds, 200 kilos, 440 pounds. Lift is good. Lift is not good. And then after you hear that for 8 hours, you want to blow your brains out. And and that's all he could say. And I got a funny story. I have a funny story about that. This is when our warm up room, pipe and drape, the curtains, right? Pipe and drape. Used to have like a 6-foot pipe and drape behind our table where we had all the scorecards, because we were doing everything manually on scorecards. And the pipe and drape had one slit down the middle. And this one coach kept sticking his head out where the two of us were announcing, and he would say, "What's the weight on the bar?" And the guy would tell him, and he'd stick his head out and say, "Who's the next lifter?" And he did this for like an hour, and finally he goes, "What's the weight on the bar?" And Dave had enough. He said, "I just fucking told you. It's 200 kilos." And the guy pulls his head behind the curtain, and about a minute later, he sticks his head out and he says, "You could be a little nicer, you know." And Dave, am I allowed to swear? Dave goes, "What the fuck did you say to me?" And he stands up and he knocks the whole table over. The whole curtain goes over. Billy Clayton has to separate the two of them because they're brawling. So, you gotta you gotta appease a lot of people in a lot of different ways. I did a Canadian national championship once, and my friend Bonnie Rempel is her name, and I announced her name Bonnie Rempel because I thought that's what it was. And during the break, I see this old grandmother walking down this tiered stadium, holding onto the railing step by step. It took her 10 minutes to get down, and she goes, "Hey, come here." She goes, "Come here." She goes, "That's Bonnie Rempel, not Rempel. Now you get that right." So you're really, you never know how people are going to react. And then of course I get blamed sometimes. If somebody doesn't make their lift, they don't get out in 60 seconds, and I'll say, "No lift," and the parents are in the front row, and they'll go, "How come you didn't call his name?" And they're screaming, "You didn't call his name. You didn't do this. You didn't do that." I said, "I called the name, and I told him he has 60 seconds. I said, if he didn't make it, that's his issue." And they scream and yell at me, and they're hanging from the ropes. So you screw. It's make sure you always announce when there's, even though it rarely happens, 3 minutes before the next flight, 3 lifters before the next flight, you have to say no more changes, no more
Yep.
changes to the next flight. And make sure you always say that. Even if you get, say it afterwards, because somebody will come along and say, "Oh, the announcer never said it, so I'm making my change now." And we're halfway through the next flight. And I say it every time. Don't you even try to say I didn't say it because you want to change your number. And it's have you guys ever come across somebody that turns in their first? Now I blame this on the person doing the weigh-ins in the morning, but have you ever come across anybody that's turned in their opening attempts after weigh-ins by putting it in pounds instead of kilos?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. The last meet I
Yeah.
competed in, a kid did that, and he showed up, and they had 400 kilos on the bar for a squat, and he was like a 165-pound lifter, and he's looking at it, and he's like, "What?
Why?
Like
Why? Why is this happening?
so much weight?"
No, no, I'm glad you've experienced that. Most people doing the weigh-in the back room would say, that's pounds. You got to do kilos. I don't think you can do that. But if the guys or the girls not really paying attention, it slips through. And rules are rules. The guy's sunk. He has to open up with that weight. He
Yeah.
can't change it. He has to go down, and he's sunk for the rest of the competition. Now, hopefully that doesn't happen very often. I've only seen it a couple of times, but it's not a fun scenario when that does happen. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Just
No,
double your max.
Yeah, when you're hoping to squat 460 pounds for your third attempt, and you show up with 880 on the bar, and you're like, "Oh no, I've made a terrible mistake."
You're an 82.5 kilo lifter.
Yeah, it's
You
funny
know
you
what?
mentioned like calling their name or announcing it over and over again. Like there's a classroom adage where like if you haven't said it 3 times, then you just haven't said it. Like you just have to repeat yourself a
Uh,
lot.
I'm happy to hear that you giving me the experience coming from a classroom, because if somebody's not coming out, I will make sure I say their name at least 3 times.
Uh,
Sometimes I'll go up to 6 times, so that everybody in the audience hears me, and there's no excuse
yeah.
when this guy doesn't come out. I'll even do the famous line when I've announced now tell me if you get this joke now. When I've announced the guy 3 times and he doesn't come out, and I'll say, Bueller. Remember the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off,
Yeah.
and the audience. And I'm always making references to movies quite often. I'll do lines from the Terminator. If somebody's last name is Connor, I'll say, Sarah Connor, is she here? I'll be back. And people, I got that one. Some guy's name is Brody, and I'll call him Chief Brody, and I'll say, you're going to need a bigger boat. That's a
Yeah.
line from Chief Brody from
From
Jaws.
Jaws. Yeah.
I think if I didn't entertain myself a little with some of those things, I would go insane doing this every weekend for the amount of hours that I do. But sometimes I just have fun with their names. Somebody's last name is first name is Wyatt, and I'll call them Wyatt Earp. And hey, Sheriff, we want you out of town by sundown. He's being coached by Doc Holliday. I love to have fun with the names, but you have to be careful. There are some people. There was one girl, her last name was Achilles, and I made some comment about Achilles' heel, and the husband was irate, came down irate, said, "Stop saying that." Like, all right, fine.
All right. My bad.
It was just light humor. I'm sorry. So, but you know what some people do. I like when people do. There are times in the audience when people will try to heckle me, and the great thing is I have the microphone. They don't. No, nobody hears what they're saying. The guy will say, "Well, yo," and I'll go and I'll lean in and I'll say, "You know what everybody hears right now when you say that? They hear nobody can hear what you're saying." So over the years I have gotten a little less. In the beginning I was just so afraid of offending anybody. Now anything I say, I never say anything with the intentions of being mean spirited or hurtful. So if they take it the wrong way, I'll say okay, but don't start heckling me in the middle of a competition. I'm doing my best up there.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I don't know. First off, the fact that you've done all these big meets, Like there's got to be meets where if you weren't interjecting the energy, you're at a more of a local meet, which those people are doing their best. But
Right.
like when I went to that nationals prime time, like I always tell the story, like I think the first deadlift, it was men's and they were like, 100 kilo, like right around there, 100, 110. So they're strong. And it's like, I think
Uh-huh.
the first deadlift, the weakest man there opened up with like 650, something around there. And then it only went up there from there, right? It was just all
Right.
night, the biggest deadlifts I've ever seen. And then like
Right.
next weekend, you might be at a 2 rack local New Jersey meet where like one guy does 570. So it's like there is a little bit like if you're not finding the enjoyment, I would imagine there are some times where you're not going to get the energy. Not everybody's doing 1,000 pound bench press. Like so you've seen, I mean, I don't even know how many 600 pound deadlifts you've seen in your life. It's probably more than any human, I would imagine.
Probably, and I've seen more lifts than just about anybody. Which I'm a referee, and I always pride myself when they occasionally sit me in the chair that I consider myself a pretty good referee because the best way to become a good referee is through experience. And there are some times where I'll play a little game with myself where I will tell myself in my own head whether I think the lift was good or not before the lights up.
Yeah.
So I'm always judging lifts. Almost every competition. Sometimes I've even done things like I don't know if I'm supposed to do this, but I've done it. Um, a guy will come out and he'll get two blues for knee lockout before the squat. Okay, so he didn't. No, I'm sorry, it's after because if it was before, they wouldn't put their arms down. So after the lift, after he stands up and locks out, he's not fully locked out. He's got soft knees, so he gets two blues. Well, he doesn't ask. His coach doesn't ask because it's a local meet. Maybe they don't know to ask. And
Right.
I will walk into the back and I will say to him and or the coach, I will say, "Do you know why you failed the lift?" And they'll look at me and say, "No, I have no idea." And I'll say, "Because when you stood up, you didn't lock out your knees good enough." And I will say to him, squeeze your quads. Once you're standing up, squeeze your quads and your knees will automatically lock out. And they will come up to me and they will say, "Thank you so much for that advice. You made me get that next lift." There are also times when I've seen somebody make a lift and I feel it was a good lift, but they got two reds, and I will go into the back and say, "Go to the jury on that one. They're gonna overturn it."
Yeah.
And I'm I'm gonna say 2 out of 3 times I'm right. They go then some of them will say to me, "I love this one." Someone will say to me, "Where's the jury?"
Yeah.
They don't even know that they're at a national meet and they don't even know what a jury is or where it is. And I'll say those 3 guys sitting at the table, go there and tell them you're contesting that lift. And 2 out of 3 times when I go in the back, and I'm probably not supposed to do that, but I do. Um, they will go to the jury table and contest the lift, and the jury will overturn it. I'm wrong sometimes, but 2 out of 3, I usually get it right. But I'm probably not supposed to do that. But don't tell anybody out there in internet land.
Yeah.
No, I think the having that jury is an important tool because judges don't always get it right, Like sometimes we're just people. We make
All,
mistakes.
we're all human, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean that's why it's there. It's there so that we don't have to suffer those kinds of consequences, right?
Yeah, I
Just a
mean,
little buffer.
we've both judged meets at that local, and there's been times where after I made the call, while making the call, I realize that I think that's the wrong call.
Yeah.
Or like shortly after, like, I think I was wrong there. Maybe that was good depth or whatever it was like. So
Yeah, it happens.
And
People make mistakes.
the local meets, I've had people come up to me and say, who can I contest this with? And I'd say, this is a local meet. There's no jury. I'm sorry. You can talk to the chief referee and see if they want to give you a relift, but there is no jury. And I feel bad for some lifters that they're having a rough game. There are some rough referees out there. There's some great referees. There's some rough referees. But you know what? I never try say anything about any of their calls on the microphone to the audience. You know why? Everybody sees what they see, and that's why there are 3 referees. So whatever they see is is what the call is, and
Yep.
I'm not going to second guess the referees afterwards. I don't think that's respectful to the referees.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, we're like an hour and a half in now.
Yeah, I actually noticed. I was like, crap, it's going to get dark on Geno here. You have to turn on a
I
spotlight.
feel like it's been about 10.
Yeah, it's been really fun. I've enjoyed having you on. Would you hang out for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, cool. All right. I'm gonna sign us off and hit the stop button and
Okay.
say goodbye. So yeah, thanks everybody for being here. Like, comment, subscribe. It helps out the show a ton. Thank you so much. I got a new name for Geno. It's Geno, the diplomatic rock and roll pirate of powerlifting. So we're gonna throw some more adjectives in there.
You captured everything. I love it, man.
All right, I'm gonna hit that stop button. Thanks, Geno, so much, man.